Hi guys, welcome to the next part of this topic, which is looking at a thing called compound interest. So it's the second type of interest that we will cover in this topic. You'll notice here I've written compound interest using formula. You can also use a calculator for some of these. So this video is going to introduce what compound interest is, and then we're going to go through and look at the formula that we use to calculate compound interest. And then we will go and use those formulas to solve questions. There'll be another video coming up after this that will show you how to calculate these things using your Casio. Now, you can't always use the Casio to answer these questions. It only works for some questions. So this video is probably the most important of the two, and the second one is just another option for you guys to use. All right, let's get started. So what is compound interest? Now, again, compound interest can be applied to an investment or to a loan. How is it different than simple interest? Well, the second point here says that it applies different amounts of interest each time period. So simple interest, the very same amount of interest was added every time period, whereas with compound interest, the amount added in interest each time period is going to change each time period. So it's not that same flat amount, it will be something that will change. And that's because compound interest, the interest, instead of being calculated on the initial balance, like simple interest, compound interest instead takes the previous balance and calculates your interest based on that. And that happens every time period. And because of that, the interest added will be different every time. Okay, it's calculated and added periodically through the loan. That means the dollar amount of interest paid changes in every time period, as I said, because the balance of the loan changes after every time you are getting the interest paid. And then that existing amount is what they're going to use to calculate the next lot of interest. All right, we can use the formula below here to calculate the value of a compound interest loan or investment. So we have V here, which is our value at a certain time N. We have V naught, which is my principal. We have R, which is still just the interest rate per time period, and N still refers to the number of times interest is added throughout the life of that investment or loan. So these variables are the same as what we had at in the simple interest section, except that this one formula kind of takes care of everything. So remember, sub your values into this, and the result will give you the total value of the loan or investment after time N. All right. So to give you a bit of a visual, and if you look back at the simple interest graph that we did that was on the last lot of videos, you will see the simple interest when you were looking at how it was growing through every time N, and you would have noticed that it would have produced a straight line because you had that constant growth throughout. It was going up by the same amount every time period. You can see here with compound interest that that's not the case. Now, this is just a really rough example here, but we're starting off with the principal. After 1 year, it's grown by a certain amount. The second year, it's grown by more, and then the third year, more again. Okay, so it will produce a curved graph when you are looking. If you're going to graph it, it would produce a curved graph. Okay, because it's compounding. So again, there is our rule. I'm just showing you this again because you often will get asked questions. Form the rule to model this scenario. This is the one that you're going to go with. Versions of this in the booklet doesn't have this little N next to it. It doesn't really matter for this if you have it or you don't. I've included it here because I think that it's more correct, but you will be forgiven this year if you don't have that little N there. But do try and keep it in. So for this one here, this is telling me the total value equals the principal multiplied by this thing here. So you'll sub your interest rate per time period into this part here. You'll solve that bracket and hence provide a simplified version of this rule. And you guys will be keeping Vn and N as they are, just like you did in the simple interest section. So you'll have two variables that will have nothing added to them at the time. Like your X and your Y, you will leave them there as they are if you are asked to form a rule, and you'll just be inserting values into this V naught and R Okay, that's if you're asked to form a rule. And then we're going to go on and use this rule to solve questions further. We'll sub different values into that Vn and n in order to solve the question. So we'll leave that there for now, take a break for a minute, and then you'll go on to the next video where we'll cover the examples from the booklet.